Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fast Football and Philosophy with me, Dr. Adam Foxon.
Me, Professor Jack Cunningham.
Here on this podcast, we combine philosophy and football, and we are guaranteed to make you the smartest in the pub. Jack, last week, what were we discussing?
We were discussing the microclimate of Amarin, weren't we?
Why does it always rain on Ruben?
Exactly. It's not raining on him now, though. Believe me, he's sunning himself now.
No, he's enjoying himself, isn't he? Yeah, we related Amarim to John Stuart Mill's principle of harm, and a few other things thrown in the mix as well. And I mean, Manchester United are owned by the Glazers, by this kind of American parasitic family. And they've relinquished all the footballing stuff to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who you might say has colonised a little bit of Manchester United. And
these people who live in Monaco coming into our country, taking over,
taking our football clubs.
It's an absolute disgrace.
But actually, we actually are talking about this week about the importance of football clubs and what they mean to people, because football clubs are this kind of they are part of our footballing, or just out of our cultural heritage. They've been around for the last 140, 150 years, some of them, and they feature so prominently in the quotidian, in the everyday lives of so many people. They're so community based. They really instill a sense of identity in some people. In fact, I was actually talking to some people about Sheffield United the other day, and I don't know if you know this, Jack, but at the start of every half at Bramall Lane, they sing the Greasy Chip Butty song. Have you heard this? And they talk about a packet of Woodbines and a good pinch of snuff and all this kind of stuff, and how amazing Greasy Chip Butties are, and because it's about all the things that make Sheffield, and it's about they're trying to obviously kind of get that across to the players, and it's this amazing thing that makes them who they are. And today we're going to be relating that to the philosophical notion of sovereignty. So do you want to just take it away, Jack, and tell us a little bit more about what sovereignty is and how it might relate to football clubs?
Yeah. Well, sovereignty in terms of political philosophy is absolutely foundational for about the last 500, 600 years. Okay, so we go back to the end of feudalism, and there's a centralization of power. What we would recognize as nation states start to emerge, so countries with nationality start emerging, and there is a big debate then about where does sovereignty lie. Coupled with all of this, incidentally, these new countries that are emerging are having a big argument with the Pope about who gets the power. Does the king of that country get the power from God, from the Pope, from the barons of the country, from where does it, or for none of those? So there is a big philosophical debate and writing at the time about where sovereignty lies, and so absolutely foundational to political philosophy. But a very good way of looking at this, Adam, to get kind of both sides of the coin, is to look at Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Okay, because they kind of represent polar opposites in terms of where you locate sovereignty. And what they say, if you're looking at it, has really interesting implications for modern football. So it's really worth looking at. So I'll give you a brief run-in with both of these guys. So Thomas Hobbes is 17th century, and he's living in England, right in the heart of the Civil War. And eventually he has to leave England because he is conceived of as an ardent royalist. All right? Because he says this, he talks about life in the state of nature before we had civilization. Okay, he says that we had complete freedom. There were no rules, and it was a world in which you could do whatever you like. Sounds great, doesn't it? But Thomas Hobbes says,
amazing, yeah,
absolutely amazing. He says no. It was terrible. Life was nasty, brutish, and short. Simply because I presume he's thinking this, that just imagine for a minute that I've caught myself a mammoth. I'm having a mammoth steak on a Friday night, and you walk past and you see it, and you've got a big club in your hand, nothing's going to stop you. There isn't a law in the land or a police force that stops you whacking me on the head and taking my money. And you have to do that because people are going to do it to you too. So life is nasty, brutish and short. So one day or over the course of time, we all come together, all of us cavemen, and say, we are going to form a social contract. We're going to give up all this freedom because it's terrible. And we're going to hand it over to the sovereign. We're going to invest in this sovereign. The sovereign then becomes kind of like this artificial god. And he writes a book in 1651 called Leviathan explaining this. And he says, you hand over all this freedom and then you'll be safe because this sovereign will protect you and will protect your interests. But you have no freedom. And don't moan about that. But don't moan about the treatment you're getting from the sovereign because you're the author of that treatment. You're the author of that power. You put him there. So you can't moan about it. What he says is what you say, basically, because you gave him all your power. So there it is. Quite interestingly, he's saying power doesn't come from God, like Charles I was saying, his king. He says it comes from all of us. But we don't have it anymore. All right?
So just quickly, Jack, what actually is a Leviathan? Because it's a loaded term, isn't it?
Yeah. So Leviathan is it's not a mythical creature, it's a biblical creature. You find it in the book of Job, and we think now he's talking about a whale because he says it lives in the sea. Okay, but Leviathan for Hobbes was, and there's a famous picture of this, it looks like Charles I, but if you look closely at it, it's made up of people. And the Leviathan is the sovereignty, this mythical creation that we have said we've created by surrendering our power into a single person. And that Leviathan is passed from king to presumably queen sometimes. But in actual fact, Hobbes is ambivalent about this. It doesn't matter if it's a king or a queen or presumably an ayatollah or whatever.
Or a football club.
Or a football club. It doesn't matter. We just got to do it because if we don't, there's chaos. And look at where he's writing. He's writing in England in Civil War. People are saying the king shouldn't be ruling our country. And as far as he can see, there's chaos because of that. So that's why he has to scarper to France, and he's living over there when he's writing Leviathan because the Roundheads are after him because he's basically coming across as a royalist. He isn't really, because he says it doesn't matter what the power is as long as it's absolute. Power's got to be absolute, unquestionable.
So he'd be a big fan of an Evangelis Marinakis at Nottingham Forest then.
I think he would. Yeah. I really think he would. He wouldn't be. He would be typical if you put him in a boardroom in a football club. Now he'd be somewhere in the boardroom backing up a dictatorial chair. He wouldn't be in the power seat, but he'd be writing things to support them and clapping them on the back and living off them. He liked that. He liked to live off powerful people. He was good. He was very, very skilled at that. So you could imagine a big club, kind of
being kind of the intellectual henchman, I suppose. Well, I mean, Rousseau is the complete polar opposite of that. He's very grassroots, isn't he? He's very revolutionary.
So he comes a century later. He's born in the Republic of Geneva. So we'd call him Swiss now. That didn't exist at the time. Okay, and so he has read his Hobbes, and he believes in the social contract. But he says, I'm locating this completely differently. And he talks about the state of nature as he writes a book called The Origins of Inequality, a discourse on the origins of inequality in 1754. Okay, because the Academy in Dijon has had a competition. They had competitions in those days. Isn't that great? We think of competitions now, like, right in, you could win yourself a car. They had them in those days as well. And the competition was, have the arts improved human conditions? And what he means by arts is like inventions, basically, and developments. And when Rousseau reads this, he says the universe opens up in front of him, and he writes this discourse on inequality. And he says, right, the state of sin, basically, badness enters the world when somebody comes along and puts stakes in the ground and a fence around this area, and he says, this is my property. It's just invented property. And there are people there foolish enough to believe him. And this starts to create inequality. And that inequality grows and grows and grows because they invent agriculture, and that plot of land gets more valuable. Metallurgy comes along then. He might strike oil or gold on it, So now we're getting more and more inequality. In the state of nature before that, though life wasn't nasty, brutish and short, there was no property, therefore no envy, there was nobody desiring anybody else's stuff, or there was no crime, because you couldn't take anybody else's stuff, because no one had stuff.
Yeah.
And so...
although, maybe not specifically kind of private property, but if you've caught that mammoth, it's your mammoth, is it?
Yeah. I think what Rousseau would say, he was very, he said to have invented the idea of the noble savage. Okay, we don't use that language nowadays, but they were quite comfortable. He was quite comfortable with using that word savage, and he said no, it wasn't like that. We'd all catch a mammoth, and believe me, those are big boys. So we'd all sit around, and no one can eat a whole mammoth at a sitting. We haven't got a fridge freezer either. So
we all work in as one to catch it.
Mate, we've been inviting the neighbours over. We can't get rid of this boy. We've got to eat it in 3 days. We've got to invite the neighbours over for some mammoth, because...
Hell of a barbecue, isn't it?
No need to whack anyone with a club, except whack people on the club if they don't want to come to your barbecue. Like this.
That's Augustine.
Okay, so what... There is a social contract, though, because inequality is growing and growing and growing. So eventually, we all get together, just like Hobbes said. But this time we say... sovereignty is going to be in the will of all of us. So we'll all decide what the rules are and the regulations are and how we're going to live. Now, we'll have a government, but the government's job is just to make sure that that will of the people is enforced.
Representative.
That's the social contract. It's a beautiful book, Adam. Right, the first line of it says this. It's a gorgeous line. I'm going to paraphrase it now. It says, all men are born free, but everywhere are in chains. It's a beautiful line. No wonder in the French Revolution they're carrying around copies of Rousseau with them. These sans culottes in the Revolution, because this is fiery stuff. So he would, I don't know where you'd locate him in footballing terms, but for me it would be like it would be like the supporters owning the club. Sure, they've got a board, but the board is answerable to the will of the supporters, and I personally find that very attractive.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I mean, we mentioned in season 1 about German ownership and how they have the 51% model of ownership over there. But I mean, we have fan-owned clubs over here as well. Probably the most famous, I would imagine, is the Phoenix Club. That is AFC Wimbledon, and they came about because of fan ownership and because obviously I don't want to get too much into it, into positive here, but into the move to Milton Keynes, and so I mean, and again, actually, they're doing really well, aren't they? I think last season they had a game where they played MK Dons, and I think they beat them 1-0 at home. So
they're
going to be competitive again, aren't they?
Yeah. No neutral could have been supporting Milton Keynes.
No, and no neutral would, because one has given power to the sovereign.
Yeah.
And the other one has said, our power is sovereign.
Yeah,
that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought I saw a couple of Rousseau bobble hats in the crowd on that day, like they were.
But so this is fascinating to me, Jack, because football clubs are this kind of. I always have a problem with people talking about football clubs as if they're businesses, and this normally tends to happen in the summer and in January when we start to get the kind of all of the transfer windows and stuff, and people start talking about turnovers and PSR rules and financial fair play, which is kind of what our podcast is named after. And people have to kind of, and we really kind of have to work within these financial constraints, which then leads to financial decisions being made, and clubs like Barcelona pulling financial levers and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the language, a lot of the discourse around football is so business-like, right? There's a fantastic podcast called The Price of Football, where two kind of economic experts talk about the financials of lots of football club goings on and how they amortize their kind of transfer. It's all boring stuff, Jack. It's not philosophy. And what gets to me is that, so for instance, I had quite a lot of conversations with my friends when Newcastle United were bought out by the people who run the PIF, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. One of my favourite podcasts under the Football Ramble, they refer to them as the PIF Posse, which is quite nice. And essentially what's happened is that they've become sovereign to this football club, and it's sports washing, and it's all the rest of it. But so many Newcastle fans, when that was announced, their first game, and they're all wearing Arab dress.
Yeah.
And essentially, and again, I don't want to get too much into the politics of it, around that kind of ownership. But essentially, so many people are so happy to just give all of their agency as fans away, and give it to a sovereign, and say, actually, run the club how you like, which is really surprising in Newcastle's situation, because they had for a long time what they deemed to be an evil man in charge in Mike Ashley.
Yeah.
People would call him Mike Cashley, because he was just kind of taking money out of the club, and he never really invested much. Although he did, and I'm not saying it was great, but and so it's really surprising to me that people are just quite happy just to throw away all of the agency into this thing that makes their community, that they identify with themselves. That's a key part of their identity, and to say, actually, whatever this external part of me that makes me and makes my community run the way it does, I'm just going to give away ownership of that.
I remember when it was announced on the BBC that the multi-millionaires in Saudi Arabia, wasn't it, that bought Manchester City? Were they Saudi Arabia?
Oh, yeah, no. They're in the UAE.
Yes, the UAE. Okay, so it was announced. This is a big shock, because Manchester City have been struggling for decades, and when they were the person reporting it was outside the ground. Two lads turned up behind as she's reporting, and they've got Arab headscarves on and sunglasses, and they're just standing behind having a chat. So they must have said, "Yes, get down there and do this." And so, yeah, you're right. Some people are very, very cheerful about this, and I think that's because me and you talk about it, and we say, no, this is a horrible thing. It's got to be fan ownership, and it's got to be sovereignty has got to be with that club. But we're two rampant Bolsheviks, Adam. So. Maybe we're in the minority. Maybe your average football fan would say, listen, my club, I love it, it's struggling. If a billionaire wants to come in and throw a load of money at us and buy the best players, couldn't care where the sovereignty went, mate.
Even if it was to radically change the direction and the ethos and the culture of the club, as long as the club survives, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I had these conversations with a Newcastle fan about how, in my opinion, the Saudis were coming in to sports wash, and they were kind of trying to launder their image through Newcastle United. This team that lots of people love, and they love it because of the passion that mostly Geordies show towards their club. Right? It's really unparalleled. Like it's crazy, kind of how much they love their team up there, and they've really tried to capitalise on that. That's it. That's basically what they're doing. That's why sports washing works. And I said, are you not bothered that now Newcastle United is now attached to this kind of nation state that kind of at the time it was quite a big thing. It had murdered that journalist, and so do you know what his response was, Jack? He said, well, I remember when we got beat by Sunderland 6 times in a row.
So after that, anything is morally and ethically acceptable.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Okay,
Well, you know.
yeah.
But I still think that if given the chance, if enough people came together, because you're right, we are somewhat left leaning, right? If, for example, we could say that if every Geordie person put in £100, say, right, there would be enough of them to match the might of the PIF, right? Now, maybe not properly financially, and they could spend loads of money, but then the club can't spend loads of money anyway, and that's why Newcastle United aren't top of the table already, because they can't, or because of the financial regulations put in place to stop teams from doing just that after Man City basically bought their way to success, right? And so it doesn't necessarily matter. It really doesn't if you've got, I don't know, 10 billion or hundreds of billions of pounds in the bank, or if you've got a single billion in the bank. You can't put that much money into the club if it's not got that kind of turnover anyway. And so really, I'm positive of this. If we were to get, say, 80,000, 100,000 Geordies to all put £100 in, I'm not doing the maths, Jack, but you know what I mean. We just get loads of them globally and said, you can all have a say, and we'll do a ballot, we'll do some kind of direct democracy, and you get to decide on who we buy. It does a player recruitment. You get to decide who the director of football and the manager is, and we'll have referenda all the time. That kind of thing. I think they'd do it. I think they'd
There's historical precedents, Adam. As you know, in the medieval church, there was a tithe. You paid 10% of what you earned to your church, to your parish church. And you would do it willingly because you want your church to be great. It's the centre of your community. This is the stadium of your village, and you want it to be a lot better than the next village's church. So you're happy handing over a tenth of your corn or one of your little piglets that has just been born. But I like the idea of it being a tithe, because if you say to every Geordie, I want £100 off you, that means that the millionaire Geordie is giving very little, and the Geordie who is unemployed is scrabbling around behind the couch and under the bed to get 100 quid together. If it was a tithe, now that would be worth pursuing, I think.
I quite like that idea, actually, yeah. Although then we might have some kind of geographic issues, and because all the money's down south is what the North say, and I think we're quite insulated in that, Jack, because we're in the Midlands, aren't we? So we get the worst of both worlds. Actually, I'm actually really interested in this, and so this is a call to arms. Actually, this is a call to action. I want our listeners to tell us: are you happy to give all of the power and all of your agency away to some hopefully benevolent dictator who gets to run the entirety of your club from top to bottom in some kind of social contract, in some kind of fan contract, whereby in return you get hopefully better results on the pitch? Or would you rather have it so that you have and retain all of the power, and you give it away to a representative figure who then has to listen to what you have to say?
Are you Camp Hobbes or Camp Rousseau? That's the question, Adam.
Are you team Hobbes or team Rousseau? We should get them printed out, Jack. We should get T-shirts, Team Hobbes,
yes,
Team Rousseau, or get like Rousseau number 9 on the back. That's what we should do.
That would be great.
That would be really good, actually. Speaking of clubs kind of doing well on the pitch, next week, Jack, my little brother is a massive Arsenal fan, and he is constantly berating me about how well Arsenal are doing at the minute.
Painful.
And it honestly it hurts me every day they are top of the table. But this thing, isn't it? And I mentioned in the in one of our show descriptions, actually, that Arsenal are top of the table in England and in Europe. I know obviously that the Champions League has changed now a little bit, but next week I really want us to talk about that. I really want us to talk about Arsenal and whether or not they can become champions. Can they become supermen? Can they get to where they really, really want to be?
This is very personal for me, Adam. The first FA Cup I was old enough to ever watch was Liverpool against Arsenal, and Charlie George scored this blinder of a goal. But everyone in my family at that time, well, most of them were Liverpool fans at that because of my dad, and that broke my 5-year-old heart. Charlie George sticking that goal in. So I've long borne a very deep-seated grudge against the whole of what we talk of as Arsenal.
So, but that's not going to bias us anyway, is it, Jack?
No, absolutely not. We're academics.
We're always objective and rational, always. So that's what we'll do next week. But if you do enjoy the pod, everybody, we would love it, absolutely love it, if you could like our Instagram page, follow us on YouTube. Because we also put our stuff out on YouTube as well. Like and share everything that you see. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Because we really want to grow the pod, and hopefully then we can actually get some merch. Well, that can be Team Hobbes and Team Rousseau one day. Although I'm not entirely sure anyone would want to buy them. On that note. Go on.
You can also hand over sovereignty to a billionaire from a dictatorship.
If anyone wants to buy the podcast, we are very open to any and all offers.
Forget about all that Bolshevik stuff we were coming out with. We're easily bought.
Oh, we are shills for big philosophy. On that note, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.